This demonstration is Creating Client Presentations, a Moxi Present overview. Before we get started today, I do want to remind you to make sure that you're reviewing the requirements in your area with your broker, including those related to non-essential business and telemarketing to consumers. The tools and programs mentioned in this demonstration are optional and discuss best practices for your consideration. We would also like to highlight the importance of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, better known as TCPA. The general rules are that it's okay to contact people if that person recently gave you their phone number, but remember to check the DNC list regularly if those people haven't spoken to you in a while. You will also want to check the DNC list anytime you don't have permission. Automated calling and/or texting platforms should never be used. Pre-recorded messages and artificial voices should never be used. You will be personally liable for any violations of the TCPA. We would also like to show you how to navigate to and use CBR's Do Not Contact system. To access this platform, you would first sign in to mycbdesk.com and then click on the tile Do Not Contact. You can then type in a phone number to be checked through the system, and the results will show records for federal, state, and anywhere advisors company do not call lists. Moxi Present is a robust real estate comparative market analysis tool that enables affiliated agents to seamlessly guide their clients through the home buying or selling journey. This easy-to-use presentation builder can be used to create CMAs, listing presentations, buyer presentations, and much more. In this demonstration, we will cover the three main types of presentations: a seller presentation and CMA, a buyer presentation, and a buyer tour. And then we will go over how to share your presentation in both print and digital formats. Before we begin working in Moxi Present, I do want to bring up that your contact information from Desk Profile Manager does feed into the Moxi Work suite and thus your Moxi presentations. And so it's incredibly important that we double check our contact information in Desk Profile Manager so that it then displays correctly on our Moxi presentations. To get started, we are going to begin at mycbdesk.com, which is our main company dashboard. And in the top right corner, we are going to click on our circular headshot and then click on My Profile. Once your profile is visible, the three most important things in terms of Moxi Present, to make sure that is correct, is our agent profile image, which we can edit or update using this pencil icon. We want to make sure that if we have a preferred name or nickname, that it has been entered here. And then we want to make sure that our agent bio is also up to date. These three things are displayed on the cover page and the agent profile in our Moxi presentations, and so we do want to make sure that they are correct. Once we've confirmed our contact information, we are ready to access Moxi Present by clicking on the Moxi Works tile. This will bring up our Moxi Works profile. One thing that we can check here, if we entered a preferred name or nickname in Desk Profile Manager, we do have the ability to display how our name is formatted. And we can do that by clicking on this pencil icon near the top right. Which will then bring up a drop-down menu where we have the ability to change our name formatting. Once we've made that change, simply click on the Save button in the top right corner. To access Moxi Present and begin working on our presentations, in this top blue row, we are going to click on the Present button, which will bring up our Moxi Present dashboard. First, we want to get acquainted with this dashboard. The tiles that you see represent past presentations that you've worked on, as well as possible sample presentations. If you were to click on the center of one of these tiles, it would bring up the digital presentation. If you click on the pencil icon, it will allow you to go back in and edit that presentation. If you hover over the clock icon, it will let you know when this presentation was initially created, as well as when it was last updated. And then the 3 vertical dots give you additional options such as viewing all of the different presentation types, sharing it with your client, adjusting the settings, duplicating or deleting that presentation, etc. In this case, we are going to begin by creating a seller presentation in CMA. To do this, we're going to click on the blue Create button in the top right corner. Under presentation type, in this case, we're going to click on Seller. This choice here dictates which presentation templates are going to be available to us on the next step. So for example, if I click on Seller Presentation Types, once I click Continue in the bottom right, it is going to show me Seller Presentation Templates. One thing to be aware of is that you will want to select this dropdown and select Coldwell Banker Parent Company Templates to bring up the most up-to-date company templates. You'll see that there are a few different versions for sellers, including global luxury templates, 12-minute presentations, which are really specifically designed to highlight the listing concierge program. In this case, we will be working with the main seller presentation. Depending on your location, you will see that the naming convention uses your region, your locale, and seller presentation. And you'll also notice that there are Spanish language presentations as well. For this demonstration, we will be using the main seller presentation. So I'm going to click on that circular selection icon and then click Continue. Presentation name will generally be the seller's name or that potential seller or your client. Listing source, you do want to confirm that you select your local MLS or the MLS that you will be pulling comparative properties from. And then we can click on Create. So we are now looking at the presentation editor. Just looking at the top of the page to start to get acquainted, I do want to draw your attention to these 5 tabs at the top of the page: Subject Property, Search, Listings, Estimate, and Pages. These tabs do represent the general 5 steps of creating a presentation. If I ever want to navigate between those pages, I can simply click on that tab. The other way to navigate through the presentation creation process is by clicking the blue Continue button that will always be in the bottom right corner. And what that will do is just advance the tab 1 step. If you want to go to a previous step or a previous tab, it is better to use these buttons at the top rather than your browser's back button. So we're going to begin by putting in information about the subject property. So this is the listing that we are competing for, the property that our potential client owns. Again, presentation name is usually going to be the seller's name. You can see that we do have the option of copying subject property data from the MLS. So if this property was recently listed on an MLS, you are able to input that MLS ID number, click on copy, and then that will populate listing information down below for the subject property. In this case, we will be entering that information manually. Over on the right side, you will see a stock image. You can replace that image with a picture of the subject property by clicking on Browse and then uploading a photo from your desktop. So in this case, I am going to put in general listing information. You'll see that I do have the ability to put in varying amounts of property information. None of the information on this page is required to continue on through the process, but this information is displayed on certain pages such as the cover page and the subject property page. In this case, I'm going to be putting in information for a general single-family home. Once I have inputted subject property information, I'm going to click on Continue, which is going to take me to the search step. So the search step is where we will begin to search for comparable properties. You'll see here that it is kind of using a general location based on the subject property. It is already starting to pull some comparables. You'll also notice that above this search bar, there is a circular selection for MLS number. If you prefer to search for comps in your local MLS, you can export those MLS ID numbers and then enter them into this box separated by a comma. Once you've entered in your MLS numbers, you can simply click on the search button and that will bring up a list of those comps. We can always use the built-in search feature of Moxi Present, however, to search for comparables. One of the first things that we should do is set up the boundaries of the geographic area that we're searching in. Again, right now it's using a general area based on my subject property, but I do have the ability to replace this with a city name or a neighborhood name or a zip code. In most cases, it is going to be a good idea to manually define the geographic region that we would like to search in, because it's going to allow us to be a lot more precise with the comparables that we want to pull. And we can do that using the map over on the right side. As I hover over the map, you'll see that my cursor changes to an open hand. If I click, hold, and drag, it will change the location of that map. I can also zoom in by using the plus sign at the very bottom, as well as zoom out by using the minus sign. So the first thing that we can do to define our geographic area is to use the Draw tool. When I click on Draw, it is going to bring up two options. The first one, known as Quick Draw, is very similar to using a crayon to define our area. So I'm going to left click on the map, move my cursor to draw the area. If I wanted to instead use the multi-draw function, this is much more similar to connecting the dots. So I'm going to left click to place my first dot, drag my cursor, left click again, and then I can work on connecting the dots. This function is very useful because it also allows me to select more than one distinct area. And the way that I can do that is by using this polygon icon here in the bottom left. So with this one geographic region selected, I'm going to click on the polygon icon, and then I can repeat the steps of connecting the dots. So now you can see that I am searching two very distinct regions. Another way that I can define my geographic region is with a simple radius. So I'm going to click on the radius tool over on the left side of the map, and then I'm going to left click, hold, and drag out the radius to my desired distance. Once my radius has been defined, I can change the center location by clicking and dragging the center dot, or adjusting the distance of the radius by selecting one of these on the outer boundary, clicking and dragging. Once I'm happy with my defined radius, I'm going to click on Run Search. If I ever want to clear out any of those geographic boundaries, I can simply click on Clear and Redraw. So you'll see here that it is pulling some comps based on my radius. If I wanted to further refine the criteria of my search, I do have the ability to do that through these drop downs here at the top of the list. So if I wanted to put a floor and ceiling on the price, I'm able to do that by simply typing in and then hit apply. Similarly, I can also click on beds and baths to further refine those search parameters. If I make any changes, I'm going to hit apply. And there's also a filters tab, which will bring up additional search criteria based on the MLS. The most important things to note here are the property types by which you are searching for. Property types highlighted in blue are part of the active search. So currently I'm searching for single family homes only. If I wanted to expand my search to also include condos and townhouses, I would want to make sure that they are also selected in blue. I also have the ability to set the square footage parameters on this page. And then in this column on the left, I can choose which property statuses that I am searching for. So currently I'm searching for active properties, properties sold in the last 6 months, and I do have the ability to change that timing, as well as other property statuses. So I'll leave all of those checked for now, and then I'm going to hit apply. We can see blips on the map that correspond to this list of comparables. The color of these statuses, as well as the color of the blips, correspond to the status of the comparable. Red represents sold, yellow pending, green active, and then anything else will be represented with a gray. I have the ability to change how these comparables are sorted. Currently, they are sorted by distance, but if I wanted to change that to highest price first, for example, I do have the ability to do that. So as of right now, I have initiated a search for comparables, but I have not selected any of those return results to be a part of my presentation. To select which comparables are added to my presentation, I have a couple ways of doing that. The most basic is to click on the plus sign on the picture of a comparable. If you would like to add all of the comparables that you have searched for, you also have the ability to click on the blue Include All button at the top of the list. You can also exclude all if you wanted to go back to manually select. You'll see that change to a green check mark, which will then indicate that it is added to our presentation. So we are now on the Listings tab. From this page, there are a few different things that we can do. The most important thing is to review the comparables that we've selected. And we can do that by glancing at the pricing information. We also have the ability to open up the listing details by clicking on this button underneath the picture thumbnail. Additionally, on this page, we have the ability to change the order by which these comparables are sorted. And this does dictate the order that the comparables appear in our final presentation. If we know of comparables that were not on the MLS, but we would like to add them to be included, we do have the ability to add a custom listing or custom comparable. You would have to enter information about that comparable manually, but it will add that data into our CMA. If for some reason I wanted to delete one of these comparables, so I can simply click on the red X, click on Remove, and that will then be removed from my presentation. If I wanted to go back and maybe add a comparable that I did not select before, I can do that by simply clicking on the Search tab at the top, which is going to bring up my previous search and the list of matching properties. I can then go back and select whichever comparable I wanted to add, and then click on Continue in the bottom right. This will take me back to the listings page. Once I've confirmed that my comparables look good, I'm going to click on Continue in the bottom right again. The Estimate tab is going to give us more information about pricing stats. Over in this box on the left, you'll see the average price of sold comparable properties, as well as an average price per square foot. We can see the square footage of our subject property, and what it's going to do is multiply the average price per square foot of the comps by the square footage of our subject property to come up with a bottom line price. You'll see that over in the estimated pricing box, the estimated market value is going to show the average price of the sold comparables. If we wanted to change the price that's displayed, we can simply delete that, enter in our own price. We also have the ability to create a range. So I can manually put in a minimum or a maximum, or generate it based off a percentage above and below the estimated market value. I also have the ability to enter remarks for my client. Additionally, on the Estimate tab, we can go to the Estimated Net Proceeds section. So if I wanted to enter information to give my client a better idea of net proceeds, I do have the ability to manually enter information related to their existing mortgage, broker commission, escrow fees, closing costs, etc. I imagine you're going to edit that part out, but just thought I'd throw it in there. Once we're done on the estimated pricing page, I'm going to click on Continue in the bottom right. And this is going to take us to the final step of creating this presentation, known as the Pages tab. Over here on the column on the left, these different rows represent the different pages that are included in this presentation. And again, these are dictated by the Coldwell Banker Seller Presentation template that we selected at the start. The pages in general that have all caps are Coldwell Banker marketing related pages. And as you scroll down to the bottom half of the presentation, the pages that are in standard capitalization are generally the pages related to the CMA or comparative market analysis presentation. We do have the ability to customize our presentation. I'm not going to go into that too much because that is covered in a different video, but just very briefly, if I wanted to delete certain pages, I can select a presentation page and then click on the X to the right to remove that page. I also have the ability to change the order of certain pages. I can do that by selecting a presentation page, left clicking, and then dragging that page to a different order. I also have the ability to add page, and I can either add a page from the Coldwell Banker library, or I can create a new page within the Moxi Present platform, or upload a PDF. Again, those options are covered more in a separate video, so we're not going to go into them today. To view my presentation and preview it, I have a couple options. Up in the top right corner, if I click on the View button, I am able to generate a web or digital presentation, as well as two different options of PDFs. And these are known as the print portrait orientation and the print landscape orientation. To preview my presentation, I'm going to simply click on the web version, and I'm going to click on the print portrait version as well. As those are loading up, I want to show you that you can also send this presentation directly to your client through this platform. To do that, I'm going to click on the Send button at the top. Here you'll see a few different options for which format that I'm going to send to them. So I can send them one or all of the different presentations. In general, I think it's a good idea to send them both the digital version and a PDF version. That gives them the ability to choose which format that they like to view it in. I can then enter in my client's email address. You'll see that as I start to type in that email address, you do want to make sure that it then changes to appear below the to line, indicating that they will receive that email. I have the ability to add a subject line. As well as a greeting. Down at the bottom, if I would like to send myself a copy, I have the ability to toggle that on and off, and then I can simply click on the Send button. Now that my presentations have been generated, I will bring up those two options just to kind of go over the differences. So the first one is the virtual presentation. And this essentially functions as a live interactive web page. This is absolutely something that your client can scroll through and view, or you could, bring your client into the office, hook up your computer to one of the big screens that you may have, and present to them similarly to how I am presenting this presentation to you right now. I do have the ability to use my mouse to scroll through the presentation, as well as using these navigation buttons in the bottom right. If I click on the 3 horizontal lines, that will bring up a table of contents, which will allow me to jump to any part of the presentation that I wanted to, such as the CMA portion. The other type of presentation is a PDF presentation. This is generally designed to be printed out so that you can present a physical product to your client. Again, all of the presentation pages will mirror the virtual presentation. It's just in a format designed for printing. Again, I can skip through different parts of the presentation to view the comparables, etc. So now that we've created a seller presentation, let's move on to a buyer presentation. To navigate back to my Moxi Present dashboard, I'm going to simply click on the home icon on the top left. And you'll see now that the presentation that I just worked on is now located at the top of my dashboard. A buyer presentation is more of a simple process because it's not going to include any comparables. It is going to be more of a buyer's informational packet. To get started, I'm going to click on Create New in the top right. And in this case, I'm going to select the buyer presentation type and then click Continue. Same thing as with the seller presentation, I do want to click on this drop-down option and select Coldwell Banker Parent Company Templates. Again, you will see a few different options. In general, though, you are going to be using the buyer presentation, matching your locale. And then I'm going to hit Continue. Presentation name, again, this would generally be the buyer's name or the client's name. And then I'm going to hit Create. Edit this part out before I get started. So now that we are in the editing panel, the steps are going to be very similar to a seller presentation, but we are going to be skipping a couple of them that are not applicable. Ugh. Restart. So now that we are in the editing panel, we are going to follow the same general workflow of the seller presentation, but we will be able to skip some of the steps because they will not be applicable to the buyer presentation. So starting out, really on the subject property page, the main thing is that I want to have my buyer's name at the top, and then I'm going to click Continue. The next option is going to bring up the Search, Listings, and Estimate tab, similar to what we worked on before. For a buyer presentation, it is not going to have any CMA pages included with the default template. And so what we can do is skip through these steps by clicking Continue in the bottom right, or we can skip directly to the Pages section. Again, we can view the pages included in this presentation by clicking on these rows over on the left side. Again, as you browse through these, you will notice that it is more of an informational packet. We can present this to our client the same way. We can view the digital or print PDF versions. We can also send it directly to them through the platform. I'm going to bring up the digital presentation just so we can take a look at it together. Again, this will be branded with your information as well as Coldwell Banker branding. And it does give the client a really good idea of what to expect in the whole buying process, as well as how you can assist them through that process and the value that you bring as an affiliated agent. The last presentation that we're going to go over today is known as the buyer tour. So again, we're going to click on Home in the top left to go back to our dashboard. Create New in the top right, just like we did before. And now we're going to click on the option for Buyer Tour. Again, we're going to select Coldwell Banker Parent Company templates, and then click on the default Buyer Tour and continue. Presentation name, again, will be our buyer's name. In this case, we will be presenting our client with properties. So this is a buyer that we are actively working with, and we want to provide them with some properties that match what they're looking for, as well as maybe plan a tour for this weekend or yeah, something like that. Edit that out. So it is very important that we have our listing source MLS selected, and then we can click on Create. So you'll see here that now at the top, the steps are a little bit more specific to a buyer tour. On this options page, you'll see that there is the INRIX drive time noted as optional, but this is, I think, one of the key differentiators in the buyer tour in that when we are providing our client with potential properties, it can calculate how long it will take to commute from their potential new home to their place of work. So in this case, I'm going to say, and the starting location would be place of work. So I'm going to use Google headquarters, which I think is 1600 Amphitheater Parkway. That's in Mountain View. It looks like it already recognized that. So I'm going to go ahead and set location. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to click on continue. And now it's going to again bring up the search option. So in this case, I'm going to search for properties. And I know kind of what my client is looking for. So I'm going to start to enter in that information similar to how we did it for a settler presentation. So I'm going to put in a maximum price. I'm going to put in a minimum number of bathrooms. I'm going to click on filters. And in this case, because I am creating this for a buyer, I'm not going to include any sold properties or anything that is not currently active. Again, I do have the ability to select property type, just like we did before. Another really cool ability is to select only houses that are open this weekend. In this case, I'm going to select that and then hit apply. So I'm going to review which properties my client might be interested in. If I wanted to view these in a little bit more in depth, I can always click on the details button, which will bring up all of the pictures from the MLS, as well as the full property details. So I'm going to select a few properties that I think my client might be interested in, and then I'm going to click on the continue button in the bottom right. You'll notice that this listing step is again quite unique to the buyer's tour, and what it allows me to do is schedule an outing or a tour with my clients. So you'll see here that it is plotting all of those properties on the map, and it tries to plot them in a reasonable manner for viewing. If I wanted to be a little bit more specific with viewing times, I can always switch on the option for meeting time and start entering the time that I would want to meet my client at that address. If I wanted to change the order, so instead maybe I wanted to start more in the south, I can always click on the change order button in the top left. And then you'll see here that this presentation template is all about comparing properties. So it does not have the same informational pages that our buyer presentation had. It is all about presenting potential properties to our client. Again, similar to the seller and buyer presentations, I have the ability to delete pages, reorder pages, etc. In this case, I'm going to click on View, and let's take a look at the web version. So I do want to show you the commute time or the drive time that we set up earlier. So here you can see the properties that I've selected. I do have a few different ways to view more information about them. So I can always click on one of these thumbnails at the top. And I can go over, the open house time with my client, view all of the photos, the property information, and then you'll notice here under the address, calculate drive time. And then I can kind of see, depending on the hour of my client's commute, how long they can expect to get to work or to go from work to home. So just kind of like a really cool piece of information that we can provide to potential clients. Again, I have the same options for sharing this presentation with my client. I can click on the send option, select the web, virtual, or any of the PDF options, enter their email address, choose to send a copy to myself, and send that off. So we've gone over the three main types of presentations: seller presentation, a buyer presentation, and buyer tour. Just want to wrap up with a couple of slides. As we conclude this presentation, I want to remind you of our next available appointment service where you can book a 20-minute solution-oriented virtual appointment with one of our 100+ marketers in as little as 2 business hours. You can book these appointments for support on our core marketing tools at nextavailableappointment.com.